perfect 90-degree corners, like 100-ton granite boxes. They're insane.
The Serapeum boxes are one of the world's most incredible mysteries. Every aspect of these 24 granite boxes is peculiar and confusing, riddled with anomalies. Discovered in 1850 by French scholar and Egyptologist Auguste Mariette, within a giant underground necropolis of narrow tunnels in Saqqarah, the Serapeum boxes have captured the interest of modern historians. Believed to be sarcophagi or coffins for sacred Apis bulls, the precision, perfect angles, mammoth weight, and their underground placement have baffled archaeologists, engineers, and historians. Today's most sophisticated technology and diamond-tipped drills would cower at the mammoth task of achieving the mathematical genius of the Serapeum boxes. How did an ancient Egyptian civilization, armed with copper tools and chisels, manipulate and shape hard granite with such accuracy? How were these 24 giant boxes that weigh 70 to 100 tons each not only transported to the site, but also precisely centered and installed in their notches? Archaeologists theorize that the Serapeum of Saqqarah is an ancient Egyptian burial place for sacred bulls of the Apis, which were believed to be incarnations of the god Ptah. But why would Egyptians go through such incredible amounts of effort, manual labor, manipulation, and precise craftsmanship to bury dead bulls, albeit divine? Seems like an overkill. Carved out of giant blocks of granite, the Serapeum granite boxes lie within miles of underground tunnels. With remarkably perfect 90-degree corners in the boxes, ancient craftsmen managed to ensure precise geometry of the walls inside the boxes, even at 11 feet apart. The mathematics involved in building this box is nothing short of phenomenal, and according to in-depth modern calculations, the dimensions deviate by thousandths of an inch, a negligible deviation, one that's almost impossible to recreate. How exactly did ancient Egyptians equipped with iron, bronze, and copper tools manage this level of accuracy? And what is the true historical significance of the Serapeum of Saqqarah? Traditional theories by mainstream archaeologists are riddled with plot holes as large as the Great Pyramids. Mainstream Egyptologists date ancient structures based on engravings or inscriptions. Therefore, the official dating for the Serapeum boxes is based on the rough, amateurish scratches and carvings found on some of the boxes. Egyptologists have dated these carvings, and hence the Serapeum boxes, to 3000 BC. But the hieroglyphs on these select Serapeum boxes are crude and lack the original mirror finish of the boxes. There are also abundant micro-scratches and marks where chisels slipped on hard granite during the carving process. Imagine building these over-engineered boxes out of ginormous granite blocks with incredible mirror-like polish, only to hand over the carvings to an amateur that scratched chickens on top. This graffiti of carvings can't hold a candle to the super craftsmanship and mathematical genius of the Serapeum boxes. What if the boxes were built in a different era and inscribed by a different civilization? But the bigger question remains. No matter which ancient era is the mastermind behind these boxes, how can mere human muscle and strength possibly execute this architectural marvel? As we dive into other details of these boxes, we get no closer to solving these mysteries. In fact, the truth about these boxes continues to get even more confusing. According to scientists and archaeologists, the type of granite used for some of the Serapeum boxes isn't even available in the quarries of Saqqarah. In fact, most of the granite blocks for these boxes came from quarries in the eastern desert of Egypt. With no rivers connecting eastern Egypt to Saqqarah, the distance spans around 800 miles of mountainous terrain and obstacles, Imagine transporting the weight of one granite block across the region without technology, without machinery, and dragging these blocks one by one on wood planks. Does that sound possible? But not all boxes are made of that specific granite from Eastern Egypt. Some boxes are constructed out of granite that's found in the quarries of Aswan. Aswan is approximately 500 miles away from Saqqarah. And although Saqqarah and Aswan are connected by the River Nile, imagine the weight of only one of those quarried blocks on a boat in 3000 BC. With each finished box estimated to weigh between 70 and 100 tons, scientists estimate that a single raw granite piece required for one of these sarcophagi would have weighed over 200 tons. Egyptologists paint a picture of massive stones being put on planks and sledges, pouring sand underneath to drag them smoothly over mountainous terrain. But consider the weight and mammoth size of these boxes, and all these explanations fall flat. Moreover, an abandoned box sitting in the center of a tunnel had no wooden sledge underneath it. Without machinery, hundreds of men working in unison would barely produce enough combined force to shift this box. But this army of men wouldn't even fit inside the tunnels. Take a look at this box as it sheds light on several aspects of the construction process. Firstly, the tunnel is only 2 feet wider than the stone's width, so there's no room to fit the hundreds of people required to push the incredible weight of the stone. Secondly, the stone box is unfinished, which means the workers didn't complete the construction above ground. Instead, workers chose to take them into these narrow tunnels to be carved, finished, and polished. Lastly, this box shows that for some cataclysmic reason, the project was suddenly aborted. Some of the boxes don't have lids, and one box lid lies morosely in the entrance tunnel. Clearly, they've been abandoned in different stages of completion. Now just imagine that work environment. Tight tunnels, with some alcoves having less than a foot of clearance, manipulating hard granite with saws and chisels that's producing massive amounts of dust, trapped in a dark underground with barely any ventilation and clouds of dust. That is where ancient Egyptians executed the marvelous accuracy of the Serapeum boxes. How do we work with similar granite today? Explosives are deployed to remove chunks of granite, lifted out of steep quarries by heavy machinery, then sliced using massive saws that work under hydraulic pressure. Moreover, in modern times, even with incredible advancements in technology, man simply does not want the headache of working with such giant blocks of granite. It would be simply put too difficult a task. Mainstream theories include the Egyptians' skillful use of handheld tools. But even today, sawing, drilling, and cutting such a box would be a massive challenge. If experts were to imitate these boxes today, enormous amounts of manpower and machinery would be required to achieve that goal. Armed with the latest modern technology, mechanical drills, saws, and carving tools, the process would begin with quarrying one giant block of stone for each box from Eastern Egypt and transporting it to Saqqarah. Then they would dig out the insides of the box using mechanical drills, maintain geometry with advanced measurement tools, cut out the lids from the same block of granite, polish the surfaces, and take it underground, achieving that feat thousands of years ago, all by sheer manpower. It boggles the mind. According to modern engineers, manipulating such a large block of granite would simply be too much work, so they would recreate the box by using 6 pieces of granite instead of one big block and place them together to form one box. Just one look at these boxes, and basic logic dictates that their manufacture would be powered by something stronger than human hands and muscle. Hollowing out giant blocks would have required immense manual labor, but also skilled stone-cutting techniques that are still a challenge in modern times. The uniformity of thickness of the walls is equally confusing and beg rational explanations that archaeologists and historians have failed to provide. As if the smooth, finished exterior of the Serapeum boxes isn't enigmatic enough, the insides are even more impressive. Polished to a glassy surface that still holds a reflective sheen, despite no recent attempts to polish it, the boxes continue to amaze and intrigue the world. According to researchers, stoneworkers from that era were not familiar with abrasive techniques. Instead, a chemical solution was used to bring about this reflective finish. Some hardened drops of unknown residue have in fact been discovered on the base of the lids, which points to the use of some long-lost chemical formula. Today, even though the boxes show obvious signs of damage, with some lids destroyed by ancient raiders, the interiors are an ode to the Serapeum box's absolute ancient perfection. Level, smooth, and polished, the craftsmen didn't ignore the insides of the boxes at all. However, again, that's a lot of wasted effort, all to put mummified dead bulls. As we point out the startling physical characteristics and the extent of effort it took to finish these boxes, one keeps returning to the geometry, the lack of fractures in the stone, and the precision. Using stone mauls to pound granite out of the interiors would have simply not worked. The force of the blows would crack the stone blocks. Meanwhile, the alternate theory of chisels scraping away immense amounts of granite, that would simply take forever. If we were to take traditional theories presented by archaeologists at face value, we would have to believe that an ancient civilization with no machinery nor technology managed to quarry huge blocks of granite from eastern Egypt and Aswan, lifted these 200-ton blocks of stone out of the quarries, then transported these unfinished blocks hundreds of miles away to Saqqarah and shaped them into geometrically perfect boxes. All of this work only to bury mummified Apis bulls. And why such large coffins for bulls? Was the extra space meant to make the mummies more comfortable? The boxes vary in size, but the largest ones are over 6.5 feet wide and 13 feet long. If the bull's comfort was such a priority, why are other Apis bulls found buried in wood sarcophagi not far from the Serapeum of Saqqarah? Moreover, afterlife coffin comfort was hardly ever considered. Pharaohs were buried in coffins so small there was barely enough space to fit their bodies. The facts simply do not add up. One also wonders why Egyptians chose granite for these boxes. Why didn't they simply use limestone? It was a preferred element for other ancient Egyptian projects. The final resting place for the Serapeum boxes was clearly underground. At this location, the boxes didn't face any threat of weathering from the elements. So why not limestone? Limestone is not only softer than granite, more malleable, and easier to shape. It's also a relatively lighter material to shift and transport at this size. There's also an ample supply of limestone nearby in Saqqarah's own stone quarries. Using limestone would have drastically reduced labor in the supply chain. The granite used for the Serapeum boxes had to be transported from hundreds of miles away. So why choose granite? One explanation presented by experts provides some answers. According to Russian cosmonaut Konstantin Borisov, granite is the stone of choice when an airtight container is required. Borisov published his research on Egyptian megaliths like the Great Pyramids and has put forth an intriguing idea. Since granite is not porous the boxes become thematically sealed with their lids on. Granite is also unique because it's high in quartz crystals. This means that when placed under mechanical stress of increased pressure, an electric charge would be generated. Were these magnificently architectured boxes mistakenly attributed to sacred bull burials and were actually giant batteries? Borisov has detailed that under incredibly high stress, the boxes would produce voltage that could be high enough to ionize the air around it, causing it to glow. The lack of soot and burn marks on the walls inside the tunnel support the idea that fire torches were not used underground. Is that why the ancient civilization executed the humongous task of transporting granite all the way to Saqqarah? Because they required a non-porous material that traps gases at incredibly high pressures. With the lids of these boxes weighing almost 30 tons, maybe the box was meant to be used as a pressure chamber, or to execute a sophisticated scientific process. Furthermore, a 19th century sketch of the boxes also backs Borisov's theory. The sketch depicts piles of stones placed on top of the lids. Someone that built or used the granite boxes was trying to amplify the pressure of the lids and trap whatever was within. If these boxes were meant to be coffins, why would they need this added weight on top? It's not like the mummified bulls could make a run for it. So what kind of process were the original creators of the boxes aiming for? Why did a 30-ton lid need to be supplemented with extra weight on top? Egyptologists paint for us a picture of hundreds of ancient craftsmen crammed in narrow underground tunnels, in dust and darkness, dragging a ginormous block of granite through winding passages and centering it perfectly in its final resting spot. They then repeated this process 23 more times. The motivation and determination required to execute this project begs to be attributed to something more profound and meaningful than creating a burial ground for bulls. Therefore, if you pair Borisov's findings with research conducted by engineers such as Christopher Dunn, the Serapeum boxes as giant batteries begin to make more sense. Dunn presented extensive, cutting-edge research to suggest that the Great Pyramids of Giza served as an energy harvesting machine. The pyramids aren't just a flashy monument. They were meant to generate power for Egyptian civilization. That possibility leads us to consider whether Graham Hancock's explanation of these prehistoric architects actually makes more sense than mainstream archaeologists' ideas. Hancock's ideas are considered highly controversial and suggest the existence of a technologically advanced civilization that was lost in prehistoric times, quite possibly destroyed by a cataclysm. Hancock cites cultural and religious scriptures from around the world that hint consistently at the occurrence of a great flood. What if that great flood wiped out a civilization that was incredibly advanced in technology, only to make room for the Egyptian that worked with copper tools and chisels? What if humans had achieved technological greatness in a long-lost time, but mankind was forced to start over? Is our understanding of these ancient civilizations and megalithic structures clouded by a larger, more unimaginable truth? What if mankind has been here before, with machinery, power, and technology? When the media presents the idea of a technologically advanced, lost civilization that was wiped out at some point in history, it sounds far-fetched, but mainstream theories of chisels scraping away at hard granite to create masterful geometric shapes and airtight stone containers, how are these any more believable? Archaeologists have failed to provide answers to these inconsistencies and plot holes, and modern historians continue to shred conventional theories based on logic and rationality. So here's an idea that has gained more popularity among the masses. An Egyptian civilization didn't actually build these boxes, but simply inherited them, exactly like we did. What if they too did not understand the purpose of these giant chambers and decided to put their mummified bulls inside the perfect Serapeum boxes? The crude carvings on the surfaces of some of these boxes also appear to back this theory. The architecture of the box boasts advanced skill and capability compared to the hieroglyphs on the surface. The expert creators of these boxes and the amateur inscribers who carved haphazard patterns on top of them couldn't possibly belong to the same civilization. Archaeologists want us to believe that the same civilization that had the intelligence to execute incredible mathematical precision in constructing boxes out of hard granite didn't possess carving precision. These are, at best, amateur scratches. Moreover, only a few of the boxes have these carvings, while others remain perfectly smooth with mirror-like surfaces. Dating the manufacture of the boxes based on the crude hieroglyphs is a flawed strategy. These boxes were meant to serve a grander purpose than mere burials of deal bulls. So the idea of complex energy manipulation, or another scientific process that our civilization has yet to discover, sounds like a more plausible purpose of these boxes. Mainstream archaeologists continue to mock Hancock and his theory of a lost ancient civilization. Of course, no evidence of machinery or technology has ever been found within ancient structures. According to archaeologists, the Egyptian stone craftsmen had perfected their skill via incredible dedication, patience, and practice that was passed down generations. But physical human capacity is not infinite. It has limitations that we're well aware of today. And even though these historians are committed to the idea of copper tool-bearing Egyptians, multiple similar discoveries all over Egypt seriously challenge the theory of advanced stone-cutting skill, patience, and technique behind architectural marvels sculpted out of hard stone. Other archaeological sites bear similar granite boxes with absolute geometric precision that is no simple feat. We also hear speculation of diamond-tipped drills and sophisticated heavy machinery behind the construction of the Serapeum boxes and other ancient megalithic structures. But is there evidence? Some would argue that there is. Let's take a look at one example of a similar box discovered at a separate site in Egypt. It stands in the Cairo Museum, with a single, irregular slice through the granite. At first sight, it looks like a project that was simply abandoned due to an error. But look closely at the angle and depth of the cut, and it's almost screaming evidence of the shocking truth about its builders. This cut could only have been created if something sliced through stone at incredibly high speed. How did a chisel slice so deep into hard granite without the force of a hammer, which would actually split and shatter the stone beyond repair? And look at the saw marks on other granite boxes inside the Cairo Museum. They appear similar to the marks left behind by modern bandsaws. In fact, they indicate a more efficient operational speed than we have today. Are these marks evidence of mechanical cutting technology, quite like modern machines that are used to cut granite, equipped with high-quality diamond-encrusted blades? Similar technology in the hands of an ancient civilization appears like a preposterous idea. But one wonders, is the alternate theory of slow chiseling techniques using copper and iron tools any more plausible? And how do mainstream archaeologists explain these perfectly circular drill holes in various granite artifacts discovered in Egypt? The uniform width of these holes and the depth within the granite piece itself would require a high-tech drilling tool with a diamond-encrusted tip. Another example is a cylindrical granite artifact that was discovered near the Great Pyramid. This cylinder is marked with a continuous spiral groove, quite like the one we see on a vinyl record. How did ancient Egyptians create this spiral without high-speed rotation? The idea that an Egyptian civilization merely discovered and repurposed the Serapeum boxes sounds more convincing, especially if you pair it with the amateur carvings on architecturally perfect boxes. It appears that the answer lies in a missing piece of the puzzle, a forgotten technology swept away by the Great Flood or other cataclysm, one that's simply waiting to be unearthed, one that would explain not only the origin, purpose, and craftsmanship of the Serapeum granite boxes, but also the grandeur and magnificence of other geometrically precise megalithic structures. For now, the mysteries surrounding the Serapeum granite boxes remain unanswered. The exactness, precision, choice of material and transportation all remain unexplained. Why were these boxes dragged to an underground labyrinth? Why use such a difficult and hard material? How did craftsmen achieve interior wall flatness that's accurate to 1/20th of a human hair? How did they move these mammoth weights from far-off quarries, hundreds of miles away? How did the boxes get dragged through narrow tunnels without any room for workers and laborers? Where did this astonishing mathematical precision come from? And why were the interiors polished into a glass-like surface if they were only meant to hold mummies of bulls? But on the other side of the coin, if these boxes were in fact created by a prehistoric, long-lost, technologically advanced civilization, how did they fit machinery in these narrow tunnels? What could they possibly have used to maneuver these heavy boxes through the tunnels and into their notches? We continue to hear of magical beings, aliens, or a nation of giants behind the Serapeum boxes and other megalithic structures found all over the world. But each of these theories has its own far-fetched, preposterous features. Modern civilization awaits a rational explanation, but without any solid evidence. Our only option is to draw personal conclusions and conjectures about the Serapeum boxes, ones that sound the most sane and rational, if that's even possible.